Welcome back to the Blister and Muck podcast. I'm Jenny Mason, your host and the creator of the Blister and Muck series. This week, the pigeons are back, which means Blister's troubles turn to burdens. First, he can't get rid of Muck, and then a secret agent spy pigeon delivers some harrowing news. When Blister tries to solve the situation with his usual cheap tricks, the pigeon shows him that two can play that game. When will Blister ever learn? All joking aside, have you ever wondered why pigeons and rats are among the most common animals living near human cities and farms? Scientists have found that these animals are ideally adapted for large, mostly uniform ecosystems. The more humans clear away diverse and complex microecosystems, the more we help pigeons and rats take over. Rodent experts estimate rats now outnumber humans living on the planet. Compare that to only 400 million pigeons. Researchers in the United Kingdom estimate that people in cities are never more than a few feet away from one of these animals. This fact is sure to make a lot of listeners unhappy, because most people either hate or hate and fear, rats and pigeons. And on one level, it's easy to see why. Rats are destructive. They chew up anything in sight. In a year, one pigeon produces 25 pounds of poo. But to be fair, rats have to chew as much as they do because their teeth never stop growing. And for thousands of years, people used pigeons like cell phones. That is, they used the birds to carry text messages around the globe. Pigeons have a built-in GPS system also called their homing sense, which allows them to chart their way home from anywhere in the world. And over the centuries, science laboratories have relied on rats and pigeons as test subjects in countless experiments. The more we learn about them, the better we understand ourselves, and the more we realize how much we resemble pigeons and rats in our brains and behaviors. So, what does it mean that we despise our feathery and furry twins so very, very much? Episode 13, Pigeons in Peril. Days later, the bell tower was a carnival of noise, with some bit of bug carcass dinging off the bell, spindle skidding, intending to chase the ricochet, but instead crashing into a stack of matchboxes, Muck laughing, and the bug carcass sailing off again. Blister grumbled. He slouched on the window casement and stared gloomily at gloomy black rust. The lumpy feta clouds purpled into exotic cauliflower. The city's chimney smoke swirled into the recipe, making a rather gamey stew. How could he brainstorm with a couple of noisy buffoons oafing about? He needed to devise better food filtering strategies. Suspecting the electrified rat traps lurked anywhere or everywhere, Blister had to either audit every inch of ground or avoid the covert conduits throughout Black Rust. To make matters worse, the more Muck failed to secure his own meals, the harder Blister had to work to feed them both. Somehow he'd have to speed up Muck's city survival lessons. At the current rate, and assuming they didn't starve to death first, Blister calculated that Muck would be living with him through summer and fall. When this realization did not cause Blister's whole being to shudder, he told himself he was simply too tired to shudder. Eventually, Spindle brought the fetch and tug-a-bug games onto the casement. With a battered grasshopper leg stretched between them, The rat and spider scuffled around Blister until they tired. Spindle curled up in the coil of Blister's tail and gnawed on the bug leg. Muck plopped beside Blister. "Jolly jesting," he exclaimed. "I am basically bushed, as they say." He leaned back on his paws and stretched out his feet. The electric lights dotting the city dimmed and flickered as they had on previous evenings. As before, they all shut off. Where there were no gas lamps, the city marinated in murky darkness. "Oh my," Muck said. "To be expected. Everything breaks here eventually." Blister shifted closer to the candlelight. "Strange how quickly we grow accustomed to new things," Muck remarked. Blister responded with a disinterested, "Uh-huh." Several months before the, odious occurrence, the estate where I lived had been wired for electricity. Muck massaged his feet as he spoke. "I remember everyone making such a frantic fuss. Some of the servants swore they'd avoid any room where a light bulb burned for fear it would zap them while their backs were turned. But within a tolerable time, the reverse was true. They avoided rooms without electric light, complaining it was deleteriously dark with only candles or oil lamps." After a pause, Muck said, "That reminds me of a rich recollection from the day I heard about the honey delivery. As I traveled through the kitchen walls, making my pantry pilgrimage, the baker and the butler advanced an avid argument about some modernistic machine. Apparently, every time the baker ran his new electrified mixer to whip eggs, all the lights in the house dimmed dourly. The butler came to take the mixer away, but the baker wouldn't hear of it, not when a sumptuous soufflé was on the dinner menu. And yet it had been the baker only a few months before, valiantly vowing, like a knight, that he'd never negotiate on electricity in his kitchen. I, for one, sided with the butler, and I'll tell you why. Just as I was passing by in the wall, the baker puckishly powered up the ghastly gadget. It set off a spiteful spray of sparks from the outlet, which nipped naughtily at my tail." Muck chuckled. Blister sighed. The city's electric lights blinked on. "Do you suppose it's the wharf rats?" Muck asked. "Why would they tamper with the city's power supply?" "The more electricity spreads across Blackrust, the more territory they lose for their nocturnal noshing," Muck explained. "Perhaps they are enacting a sinister scheme to chew through power lines and sabotage the system so they can return the city to darkness." The suggestion sounded so plausible that Blister marveled at the rat next to him. Muck mistook the gaze for mockery. He wrapped his tail around his paws. "Just a theoretical thought," he murmured. Before Blister could respond, the whip, whip, whip of flapping wings arose. A feathered comet burst out of the night stew and hurtled toward the window. "What the deuce?" Muck began. He didn't get any farther because Blister shouted, "Duck!" and yanked them both backwards off the casement in a tumbling somersault. They thudded to the floor, barely avoiding a collision with the flapping missile, which crashed into the bell. Clong! Muck dusted himself and helped Blister from the floor. Because most birds whipped bugs into beak batter, Spindle hid in the nearest cranny. "That's no duck, that's a pigeon," Muck said. "Really, Blister, we need to work on your ornithological observations." "It's fish feathers," Blister said. He nudged the feathery heap on the bell tower floor. Although he anticipated the bird he called Toffee Splotch to come crashing in next, she never arrived. To Muck he said, "Assuming this bird hasn't knocked out its seed-sized brain, I'll be able to give you that lesson in trash talk after all. Trash talk is how you find out what you need to know. To do it effectively, you've got to assert yourself. State exactly what you want. Don't get bullied or bamboozled. Then you get exactly what you asked for. Like this." Blister roused the pigeon. Fish Feather's gaze swiveled around the room. When his dizziness cleared, He flapped onto his feet.
"Help! I need your help!"
Fish Feathers pleaded with the rats. "You need help," Blister scoffed. "I believe you owe me some help. Remember those traps?"
"The traps, of course! That's why I'm here."
"Good. Tell me everything you know."
"She's in trouble. We have to help her. Let's go."
Fish Feathers flapped to the window, but Blister caught him by the tail feathers and yanked him back. "Nice try. First, tell me what I want to know about those Dr. Van Sangfroid traps. Then you can be on your way." Fish Feathers became frantic. Molting feathers floofed off his body and wafted to the floor.
"I cannot tell you about the traps. Not now. There's no time. If we dinna hurry, they'll—"
Blister interrupted. "I knew it." He jabbed his finger into the pigeon's chest, backing the bird against a wall of candle boxes. "I'll bet you didn't even bother investigating. Well, that's it. I'm going to see the good feather."
"Blister," Muck interjected, "I believe this feathered fellow is trying to tell you—"
"Not now, Muck." The pigeon flapped his wings at Blister until he had the rat backed against a stony wall.
"Pay attention, ye pea-brained tufttail."
More feathers sprayed the air.
"If you'd only listen, they've got her, and we have to help her. You cannot tell the good feather, or else we'll both be dismissed from the order."
"I don't care what trouble you and your pigeon pal have gotten into. You promised me information. If you broke our bargain, then you have to pay the price." Blister smacked his fist into his other paw.
"I'll tell you what I know, but first we have to help her before they harm her."
The bird collapsed in a defeated fluff.
"Oh, what if they've already killed her?"
Blister reared back both fists. "I didn't want it to come to this." Fish Feathers hid under his wings. Muck nabbed Blister's arms and hauled him away from the pigeon.
"That's quite enough of this brutish behavior," Muck bellowed.
"In case you haven't noticed, this abject avian needs our help, not a prodigious pounding or felonious fisticuffs." "Pounding?" Blister wriggled out of Muck's grasp. "I wasn't going to hit him. I was just going to chuck him out the window." "Enough." As regal as a king, Muck walled his paw in front of Blister's snout. "Enough of your barbaric bravado. I'll handle this." Muck knelt beside the pigeon. He stroked the bird's back, which only dislodged more loose feathers. "You poor, pitiable pigeon. Tell me of your troubles. How can we help?" Between sobs, Fish Feathers said,
She's in trouble. They've taken her."
"Whom have they taken? Who are they?" "This is pointless," Blister objected, only to receive a hushing glare from Muck. "Spindle, I say, Spindle," Muck called. The spider crept out of hiding. "Good boy. Our guest could use some refreshment. Have you anything justifiably juicy in your supply stash? Your pest purse? Your insect intersection?" Spindle retrieved a fat moth so fresh it was still twitching. While the bird beaked down the bug, struggling to swallow the sticky web wrapped around it, Spindle ascended to the top of Blister's head. "Get out of here!" Blister shooed the spider away. Then he turned his attention to relighting the snuffed candles. When the sobs were all soothed, the pigeon said,
"Secret Agent Horchata is my partner. They've got her, but I do not know where they are."
"I see. And may I have the honor of knowing your name, my charming chap?"
"Secret Agent Seltzer."
"All right, Seltzer," Muck said. "Perhaps you ought to pursue this pot-boiler from the top. Give us the beginning of this business."
"We were investigating those strange Dr. Van Sing-Song traps."
"Van Sangfroid," Blister corrected.
"Whatever they're called. It's incredibly difficult to find invisible traps. The pigeon scowled at Blister. We had flown to the police station. We figured we'd do some reconnaissance, see what they knew, if anything. As we flew over the stables, we saw dozens of cats circling one of the police horses. We both thought this was odd, so we dropped in for a closer look. Imagine that. Felines flustering such a massive mammal. Horchata proposed to calm the horse, while I distracted the cats. She swooped down, and wham! A huge trap snapped around her and the horse. Goodness gracious, Muck said. And the cats too, I suppose. No, Seltzer shook his head. They avoided it, as if they knew it was there. Come to think of it, those cats were shepherding the horse directly to the trap. Then what? A bearded man limped out of the shadows. He cracked his whip and sent the cats scattering. Several of them noticed my perch and came after me. They chased me until they were exhausted, and then they went away. By the time I got back, the bearded man, the horse, and Horchata were all gone. I knew it, Blister chuckled as he moved about the bell tower, gathering armfuls of feathers. Putresca said, "Don't be silly, Blister. The head of the zoo wouldn't be doing this." What are you on about? Muck sighed. Orville Whitmore, the zoo director. He's the one setting these traps. Why would he do that? Seltzer blinked. To get more animals in his zoo, Blister said, as he tossed a bushel of feathers out the window. You've never been to the zoo, have you? Seltzer crossed his wings. Zoos are for exotic animals like tigers and rhinos and monkeys, not everyday animals like pigeons and horses. And besides, Muck interrupted, we already know who the perfidious perpetrator is. We do? A bearded man who limps about and cracks a whip? Why, that must be Vexler Q. Drummel, Gurr's former handler. That crass criminal with the calliope, remember? That guy, Blister scoffed skeptically and resumed collecting feathers. He's not smart enough to spread butter on toast. But you want me to believe he's capable of making one of those traps? Let's discard the debate for now. We must act before some bane bloodshed befalls Horchata and the horse, Muck said. We don't have to do anything. Seltzer and his pal are spies in the Order of Observers. Ain't that right, Seltzer? Sure, but all you have to do is tell the Good Feather, and the whole order will orchestrate a citywide search. Seltzer sprang up and pursued Blister around the bell tower. The Good Feather willna help? No one in the order will help. We're spies. We work alone. If we get caught, we're expelled from the order. Sounds caustically cruel and unfailingly unfair. Don't you agree, Blister? Muck asked. Blister shrugged. Not really. Spies are wanted for what they know. Some are tortured for it. Seltzer nodded. Exactly. When a spy is caught, there's no way to prove whether or not she kept her beak sealed. That's why I came here. You have to help me before the Good Feather finds out she's been captured. Blister tossed another armful of feathers out the window. Look, I'm sorry you've got this huge problem. You'd better be sorry, Seltzer broke in. As he spoke, he punctuated his points with a solid peck to Blister's chest. This is all your fault. You made us investigate those traps, and if anything happens to Horchata, I'll make sure the Order never helps another rat ever again. Not even Madame Putresca and her rescue operatives. Blister imagined Putresca's entire creature rescue syndicate in shambles. Next, he envisioned the excruciating ankle or wrist locks she would twist him in when she found out he was to blame. Rubbing his wrists, Blister protested. "Crows on road carpet! I never said I wouldn't help. Tomorrow, I'll go see Putresca personally. She and I go way back. She'll put the whole operation behind Horchata's rescue. We'll get your partner back to you unharmed. Now off you go. Good night. I'm sure you're tired." No matter how many times Blister gestured to the open window, the bird just blinked at him. "If I go back to the aviary without my partner, all the other agents will start asking questions. I'll have to roost here until she's found." "Here?" Blister paced, raking his claws through his fur. His solitary sanctuary was swiftly becoming a boarding house. But he couldn't think of a way to make Seltzer leave. It was Blister's fault. He had forced these birds to stick their beaks into this business. Finally, he said, "If I see even a single splatter of pigeon poop, I'll turn you into a pillow." "Deal." And with that, Seltzer flapped into the cupola. He settled onto the wooden framework supporting the bell. Blister blazed an angry glare at Muck. Muck wrapped his tail around his paws, lowered his ears, and grinned sheepishly. "It's late. You should secure some sleep." "Someone's got to clean up this mess." Blister indicated all the downy feather bits still scattered around the bell tower. "I'll clean it up," Muck brightened. He dashed around, plucking feathers off the floor. "Go on. Go get a good night's rest. Sounds like we'll need it for tomorrow. I'm devilishly delighted to meet this Madame Putresca. Feast my eyes on a familiar friend of yours." "I never said she was a friend. I said we go way back." Blister climbed in his candlebox bed and slammed the lid shut. Well, who'd have thought Blister would open his bell tower home to yet another creature? All I can say is that rat had better beak careful. Birds of a feather flock together. One pigeon quickly becomes a parrot of pigeons. And if you don't check their advances or restore order, they'll swiftly take over. The next thing you know, you're taking legal action, which makes the whole scenario really awkward. Tune in next week to see if all the stress causes Blister to fly off the handle. Until then, you can stop by blisterandmuck.com. Did you know I share links to cool articles, recordings, and books tied to the many topics we cover on this show? And you can always use the contact form to tell me what surprised you in this episode. Or, what would you splatter paint if you were a pigeon? Click the subscribe button, and you'll get an email from the Blister and Muck producers as soon as the newest episode releases. This show is 100% listener supported. I always appreciate it when you tell a friend to listen along. Everyone can find the show on Apple and Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and just about anywhere else. Special thanks to composer Roland Rudzaitis for serving up the Blister and Muck theme song. Additional music from Mon Plaisir and John Bartman. Lisa Redfern supplied the crickets. Mike Koenig brought the ocean and other sound effects. I bring gratitude for my family, friends, and fans. One for one, and all for you.